Hello and welcome back to Nelson Oliver Cards. Villain Theory and I are here doing another Marvel Champions draft. Today we are drafting the top 10 aggression cards in the game. Welcome, Villain Theory. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Pretty excited for this one. I think outside of, the top few picks, this one could be, there's a lot of potential answers.
I think that there are. I'm kind of interested because I feel like we were kind of discussing a little bit before we hit record. There's a lot of like really solid top five picks, and it's going to be interesting to see how our kind of, you know, picks 3 through 5 for each one of our lists kind of shape out. But I'm kind of excited to see where you go. I've got my list, which I believe is the best case scenario here, and so we'll see. But we are doing this draft because we just released a podcast episode of our podcast Shadow of the Cast talking about the aggression aspect. You can find that on Villain Theory's channel, linked down below, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. That was a fun podcast. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Okay. So we're drafting the top 5 aggression cards. Villain Theory has the first pick this time. And so, Villain, we're doing a snake draft. You get 1 pick. It'll bounce over for me for 2, and then back and forth. What's number 1? What's the best aggression card in the entire game?
So this one is interesting because I think some people will disagree. And the definition of best, is a little
Yeah.
bit, up in the air. I'm going to say Hone Technique.
Okay.
I think Hone Technique is going to be the best card. I think it made the biggest impact of any card when it was introduced to the card pool for aggression. I think it's super, super fun and in the right situation, extremely strong. So that is the free cost upgrade requirement to mental resources. Then when you play your attack events and aggression, they're getting a huge boost in damage equal to their cost. This is like a one cost card, but we don't want to talk about that here. Dive Bomb is the obvious one, and we talk about that in the podcast. But melee, instead of doing 3 and 3, it's doing 6 and 6. I think that's huge. Into the fray, you get so much healing off it. There's loads of good options. I think it's a really fun, different playstyle. And aside from big damage or multiple instance damage, you've got no quarter, which you can get lots of card draw and things with that kind of discard style. Now with digging deep and things, so I think it opens up a whole different kind of archetype. But also there are multiple branches of it, and I mean, for 4 player, maybe Dive Bomb is maybe the best, strongest way, at least 2 players. So that's my reasoning.
Yeah. No, Hone Technique is definitely on my list. I did not even have Dive Bomb on my list because of what we kind of talked about in the podcast. Like, Hone Technique Dive Bomb is incredible. Dive Bomb, maybe not so great, but Hone Technique definitely made my list. My counter argument here is that it's a little slow, but I have to find some fault in it because it's a really good card. It's also just an incredibly fun card, right? More damage, big damage is fun. You can't argue with that. It's just fun to do. So I like that as a number 1 pick. But so yeah.
Now, yeah, now I'm scared that you've got 2 picks because I think there are some other good choices here. But yeah, big fan of Home Technique.
Yeah, so I am gonna go with my first pick in the X-Men draft was also a red X-Men. I'm gonna go with Psylocke here. I love Psylocke. I don't know if this is probably the best, but I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna stick to my conviction and say that Psylocke is the best aggression ally, mainly because I play a lot of True Solo. In True Solo, Psylocke opens up Confuse for the aggression aspect. And before we had that, before we had Professor X, who's not an aggression, a lot of the threat and loss condition is scheming out of that main scheme. And so if you can confuse the villain, you can either take safe trips down to Alter Ego, so you can recover, you can do all your basic Alter Ego stuff. And we're seeing a lot more of that in the game. And so Psylocke's opening up a whole nother side to heroes, or you can protect against that dreaded advance. So if you have a low scheme threshold, maybe you're on that final scheme and you're at that loss condition, Psylocke can confuse the villain. Now, even if you don't roll down, you have advance and you don't have to worry about it, or dark designs if you're playing standard 3. So Psylocke with that confuse, especially in the True Solo, I just think works so well in the aggression aspect. And it's the first time that we have seen confuse outside or inside of aggression, which is just a huge boon to the aggression. Plus, she's an ally. Allies are incredibly efficient in this game. We've talked a lot about allies, and so I wanted to make an ally as my first pick. What do you think about Psylocke?
Yeah, allies are really interesting. At one point, my list was like almost all allies, and I was like, no, I can't do this. And Psylocke was one of the options. So Psylocke, I think, is a really good pick. Now, I do think there are some downsides because obviously you listed a lot of the upsides, and I pretty much agree with that. But what if the enemy has steady? Now the confuses are kind of half as
Well, good
valuable,
thing that
and
she
that
can confuse twice.
yeah. But what if they're stalwart? Then he's got no uses there. And here's the thing: she is slow. I would argue maybe not slower than hone technique, but maybe because you play her, you get a confuse on the villain, but that's four resources, five effective resources, and you've not solved any actual problems on the board, like a side scheme, a minion, that kind of thing. And if the villain also has retaliate, there are a lot of little things that can trip her up. But in terms of raw efficiency, two confuses, some damage and a block coming out of that, she is such a good ally. And I do again, solo especially, that is the place where she shines the brightest because I can actually go to alter ego, so that's really good.
Yeah. I knew you were going to bring up the steady stalwart thing. So I wanted to also state that if you are running a deck that contains Psylocke and you don't want to, switch up the deck for the steady, she does have a two thwart. And so in true solo, she is an ally that can come in, she can fort for thwart and block. It is not the most efficient way to use the ally, but it is a really good threat reduction in red, which is also something that red struggles with. So yeah, I really do like Psylocke. But I think my second pick strengthens Psylocke. And I honestly, I was gonna leave this pick for one of the ends, but I like this pick so much that I was afraid to leave it, just in case that you were gonna sneak into it. And that is the power of aggression. So I'm gonna take the power of aggression as my second pick. Now, this is a resource card that has a wild resource icon, but it doubles the amount of resources it generates for red cards. So all of your expensive red cards like Psylocke or any of your allies or Hone Technique, now you just have one card and it's going to double the efficiency of what it pays for. But not only that, we actually have a lot of requirements in aggression, meaning that you have to pay with a specific resource. Hone Technique or any card that you play with Hone Technique, you need to generate a mental resource. And power of aggression can do that. If you need to generate a, you know what? Actually, no, I'm going to leave that out. I don't want to talk about future cards at this point. There are a lot of cards that require different different resource icons, and power of aggression doubles the wilds, which you can then use for any of those requirements for them. So I'm going to take power of aggression for number two. I like it at number two. I wanted to leave it to like three or four, but I was afraid that you were going to snipe it, and I couldn't leave it on the table for you, especially after taking Hone Technique as number one. Because if I'm running Hone Technique, I'm definitely running Power of Aggression.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'd saved power aggression. It was on my list. It's gonna be my last pick. I was gonna save it there because I didn't think you would go for it. I didn't think you realize about the resource kind of thing.
Nice.
I think one of the previous drafts I went for like the double resource, and
Yeah.
yes, so, yeah, that's a good one. Thankfully, it leaves my second choice is still on the table, so I'm
Oh,
really
okay.
excited for that. So I was like,
Okay.
you and little clue when you started talking about Psylocke, I thought you might mention it. Like, oh, this will help Psylocke. And I'm like, oh no, he's going for it. But yeah, power aggression, obviously, really, really good choice in probably the most popular, most used aggression card ever. So I think that's a pretty strong argument for it. Instead of one resource, it's two resources. So
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. So okay, now I like I don't want to talk about this anymore. I want to hear what this number two is that you thought I was gonna bring up after I mentioned Psylocke. What did I leave on the table for you? And can power of
So,
aggression pay for it? Um,
I mean, it can pay for it, but it cannot pay two resources toward it because it's a one cost card.
oh,
And that card is attack training. So
nice.
this is the attachment you put onto X-Men allies, and they get +2 health, which is already really good. And this is equivalent to reinforced suit and leadership. This also giving them +1 attack. So if I have a 2 health ally with 2 attack, I can basically, attack for 2, then block with them or something. Now I can attack for free, attack for free, attack for free, and block. That is a 7 damage gain. And that is the minimum, basically, possible gain. Because if they've got free attack or free hit points or both originally, things like that, it starts to go crazy with the value. And it combos with some other cards. You can cheat it in with Danger Room. You can game time it, things like that. But just the raw value, playing it as a one cost upgrade, I think is underrated. If you think you can only play this with Danger Room, if you think you can only play this on X Men Heroes, You can just throw it into any deck with a few X-Men
Mhm.
allies, and the value is really, really immense. It's a little bit slower to pay off because you got to get through the health on them, but in a multiplayer game, or even just if you get it, in the first few turns, it's just going to carry so much damage for you.
Yeah. And I do want to reiterate that point because that is something that I actually didn't realize, I think, until more recently is that you don't have to be an X Men to play this. It is locked to X Men allies, but not all X Men allies are X Men trait locked to the hero. And so it's more versatile than I initially thought it was. And like you're saying, I mean, it's just good, right? Allies are good, they're very efficient and giving. A, a minimum two additional activations. I mean, not thinking about game time or anything, but two additional activations with additional stats is just very solid efficiency there. Yeah, I like attack training. I love the troop commander archetype, and so yeah, it was on my list. Yeah, it's a good one.
Excellent.
It's a good one. Yeah, I like it, and it really does beef up some really cool allies. Um, Dang, I wish I had a pick right now, but it is your pick yet again.
Yeah, so I'm really torn between two choices now for my third pick, and I'm pretty sure whichever one I don't go for, you might end up going for in this, which is very annoying. So I'm
Heck
trying to
yeah.
think which one will the chat comments like more, or should I just go with the one I like more? And I'm really torn because they're both better in different situations. But I'm going to go with Sunfire, another X-Men ally, because X-Men allies are really good, especially the aggression ones. Sunfire, you play them, spend energy. Oh, that really annoying attachment is gone. If it just costs 2 resources to remove, still pretty good value. If it costs 3 to remove of all different types, well, now it's really good. If I had to exhaust or attack some weird way or do some weird thing, or it would take multiple times to get all the counters off, spiral swords, hello. You can get all these annoying attachments gone. And that is just so valuable. And if there's no attachment, yeah, he'll lose his value, but a 2 cost ally that can come in, attack, then block. It's not what you want, but it's still incredibly efficient. Actually, it's not a bad play at all. So he's never, clogging up your hand with a unviable option. So I think he's
Mhm.
really good, and he combos well with attack training and power of aggression.
Yeah, Sunfire is great. Sunfire was my number two pick in the X Men draft, so you know that. I mean, he was definitely on my list. Uh, just the flexibility that he has to get rid of some of those attachments is awesome, and in some cases, a little overpowered. I would say because there's a lot of them where it's not just spend resources; it's do this horrendous thing to your hero, and then get rid of it, and he just kind of bypasses all that, which is pretty great. So great pick, great pick. A little sad to see him all the way down at three. I think he deserves a higher pick, but I understand why he's at three. Yeah, that's honestly on me. I think
Yeah, you should have picked him. Come
I
on now,
should
son.
have. I should have. Nice. Alrighty, so it's back to me for my third and fourth pick. Now I have four cards left on my like top tier list here, and I think there's a couple of them that are a little bit sneakier, um, but I'm trying to figure out which one I can more safely float. Uh, I think just we'll just go for it. I think the one that is on my list that you were waffling between is Gold Balls here. I'm gonna take your other X Men from your X Men draft again. The allies are just so efficient. Gold Balls here, being able to come in and just deal an incredible amount of damage. When he attacks, you can discard cards from the top of your deck up to 3 to give him that additional damage to his attack value. So being able to come in, discarding cards is not bad. Like I feel like when they started this archetype, like a lot of the benefits that you get, I think outweigh the potential downside that they or that was kind of thought that discarding cards was going to be, especially when you run cards that benefit off of discarding cards, digging deep and White Fox and all of this. But Gold Balls just comes in just from a raw efficiency standpoint. I feel like I'm just saying what you said last draft. Incredible value. 12 damage without any upgrades. If you throw additional health, if you throw attack training on him, he's just like it's dumb. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I never really thought of until I listened to you say it last time is rush decks. And like I know rush is not a super popular way to play for a lot of people, but he if you get him out on turn 1, like you've pretty much destroyed the majority of one side of the villain just in a rush. And so it's a good time. I like Gold Balls. I feel like I don't utilize him as much as I probably should, but he's definitely just an insanely good ally.
Yeah. Um, I said it in basically one of the other drafts as well. You basically said it here. Why does he hit so hard? The discarding. I don't care if I lose my best signature upgrade
Yeah.
sometimes because I'm just he's 12 damage in the bank or he's 8 damage and a block, which is he's swinging web kick and you get a tough kind of thing. And it's split over 2 turns, which kind of means you can split it between two targets, which has its upsides as well.
Mhm.
Oh look, I got a digging deep for my troubles. Great.
Yep.
And the crazy thing is, and this is also a point toward my attack training. Hint, hint, if you're voting in the comments. If you play attack training on him, he goes from 3 health to 5 health, goes from
Mhm.
4 damage to 5 damage a pop. That's 12 extra damage and a block. Or it's 13 extra damage just for that one cost upgrade on him. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
take time to pay off, but the numbers are you don't even have to have it completely pay off for it to be completely busted ridiculous,
Yeah.
adding value. So yeah, Gold Ball's fantastic choice. I kind of wanted to say him first, but I was really torn. I think there is an argument to be said that adding extra damage doesn't always win you games, necessarily unless it's, maybe rush. And there are obviously cases where extra damage will just win you the game. But sometimes removing that attachment that was causing you a huge problem, so that's where Sunfire came in over the top. Even if it's something like Goblin Glider, for example, Advanced Glider. So the advanced one, Goblin Glider not so bad, Advanced Glider very bad. Uh, but Gold Balls just doesn't matter if there's an attachment or not. He's coming onto the board and he's going to hit like a truck for absolutely no reason. People in the X-Men draft were like, "Where's the Wolverine ally? I love the Wolverine ally." Wolverine ally probably makes top 5 at least for allies for fun, but I think Gold Balls has kind of surpassed him because yes, he doesn't heal; it's not infinite, but the tempo is
Yeah.
so good. So yeah, I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, yeah. His tempo is incredible. I would like to contest the statement that more damage does not win you Marvel Champions games. I think in the majority of cases it typically does, but
Hear me out.
no,
Hear me
I
out.
see what you're
If
saying. I
you
just
can
wanted
win a
on the
game with more
record.
damage than
I
you
just
needed.
wanted on the record that I am on team more damage typically wins games.
I'm on the team not losing also wins games, but
Oh, okay. No, no, that's fair. That's fair.
no, I really like the Gold Force pick. It's very good.
Nice. So actually, I'm starting to look at this list, and it's actually coming together to be fairly synergistic within itself, which is just kind of a nice side effect of this. But one of the things that Gold Balls is really good at is applying precise amount of damage, which aggression is so good. And typically in a multiplayer game, the role of the aggression player is to take minions out. And so when you have minions on the table, say if it has 4 health, Gold Balls can hit for 4. If it's a 2 health minion, Gold Balls can hit for 2 and take out, and you're not losing anything in that sense. And so I'm going to combo this with my 4th pick, which is going to be Hall of Heroes. And Hall of Heroes is a card that after you take out a minion, you add a counter, and then in Alter Ego, you can remove 3 counters to draw 3 cards. Now, 3 cards in a game is incredible. And if you're looking at solo, a lot of the times outside of specific situations, on a trip down, you're looking at probably net 3 cards. But in multiplayer, and this is a pick that works, I think, for both solo and multiplayer play. I think it's a little bit better in multiplayer, but in multiplayer, if you're the aggression minion slayer, you're taking out a lot of minions. There's just going to be more minions on the table. You're seeing 4 times the amount of encounter cards. You're seeing more minions, and so as you're taking those out, you're adding those counters. And so a trip down, you're very regularly seeing 6 card draw, right? 3 from the time down, and 3 on the next turn when you flip up. And so 6 cards is an entire alter ego hand. So you're effectively not really, but you're getting the resources and the card draw of another turn, which is incredible value. If you can cheese this with Ultron, mutagen formula, those types, but even in like I would say average minion scenarios, Hall of Heroes is going to pay for itself after 1 trigger. And after 2, you've doubled the value of what you've already put onto the table. And so being able to flip down, and this is where I was talking about like, hey, this actually kind of, synergizes within itself. Psylocke confuses. Now you have a safe trip down. You get to draw your 6 cards. You can come back up. So like I was just like, oh, that kind of works. But Hall of Heroes, I love Hall of Heroes. It's just one of those that if I'm building a Minion Slayer deck, it is that 16th card I put in. What are your thoughts on Hall of Heroes?
Hall of Heroes is a weird one for me because I used to use it all the time. I use it less now, but it is very good. And I think you hit the nail on the head. In multiplayer, it's just so much, so many minions that you charge it up. The problem I have in solo is that often I won't have got enough counters to trigger it more than once before the game ends. So it's kind of just repaying what I paid earlier. And the thing is, where I'm at that point in the game, it's probably time to end the game, or maybe getting close to it. You know, by the time it's got counters, and this can extend into 2 and 3 player. If there's low amounts of minions, especially, it might not have charged up enough until you basically got the game in the bag anyway. Everything's set up, so the card draw doesn't matter as much. Then that'd be my downside to it. But 4-player minion slaying role, especially against a heavy minion scenario, 3 cards here, 3 cards there, 3 cards there, and that's really good. So very fun card. I think it's a good one to talk about. So yeah, I like that one. Didn't make my top 5,
Interesting.
but
Okay.
I think it's fun. I think it's
Yeah.
fun. But we're
Yeah.
now getting onto the outside the top 5 where I think it was
Mhm.
very, so
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I really do like Holy Heroes. And actually, one of the topics that I think maybe we can reserve for a podcast or maybe another video that I want to talk with you with, like, I think you just have such like a grasp on the numbers of this game. But I am curious as to what your thoughts are around, is a seventh card more valuable than a sixth card, which is more valuable than a fifth card on a turn? And so when you're paying something back, right? Like one trigger, you get all the resources back, but are those three resources, which are your seventh, eighth, and ninth resource, more valuable than the initial three resources you put on the table? I don't want to dive into it too much here, but that's just been something that I've been thinking about recently, and I want to maybe hear what the comments and say, and maybe if you have a one sentence response to that.
My one sentence response is there is context and hero dependency that can
Mhm.
change it up,
Cool.
but definitely there's merits kind of almost in both ways. So I think it's a really interesting discussion.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. You got two more picks. You're closing it out. And so, fourth and fifth pick, were there any that you're super happy to see left to the end of this draft?
No, we,
Well, good. I
my
drafted well then.
my original top 5 is all on here now, and now I'm like, there's lots of good cards, but I don't know that they're gonna blow my mind. But I've got one that I'm pretty keen on, and I think this will round out all the allies on my list because I'm choosing not to put more on here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I'm gonna go in with 4 Odinson.
Ooh,
So
such a
this
good card.
is he's really good. There's a 3 cost ally. It's 4. He's got a hammer, 3 attack stat. you know, uh, that's pretty good. Now he does have double consequential, but rather than just have 3 hit points, he has a tough card he comes in with. This gives you amazing utility because you can play him and go for a bit of a slower tempo, leave him there. He's just relaxing. I don't know, he's drinking, in the halls of Odin. I don't know how it works. But he can just block for you in the villain phase. And that's the tough that I had access to in aggression. That's really good. It's not conditional like Frog on having a minion, anything like that. And then afterwards, hey, I can do 3 damage with him on a following turn, but not immediately because he's exhausted. That's the trade off. Or I just attack, and that tough can soak the 2 consequential damage, which is a really good tempo because then he's attacking for free, and you can attack for free again on the following turn. Then you can block with him. And that's the best tempo option, but just slightly less value than using the tough up. So that versatility, I think, is really good. If you're crazy, yeah, you can even fort with him a few times. But, no one's running him for that. But uh,
In a pinch.
the sort of in a pinch. I mean, if you go to the tough, maybe just fort one if that takes that side team. That is useful, but that kind of goes for every ally almost in the game. So I don't know. That's kind of a non-statement. I feel like for this in the argument for him, but he has this ability where spend this resource and look, he's cleaving down all the minions, in front of you basically. He can hit multiple targets
Mhm.
and paying an extra resource, yeah, you're paying an extra resource. But you're getting a minimum of 3 damage if it's applicable in that situation. So 1 resource for 3 damage, yeah, what if there are multiple minions? It's just really good. It's cool utility. And I really, really like 4. His hitting multiple targets gets better in multiplayer as well. It's more likely for actually, I might need to go back to this. It slipped my mind whether it's choose a player or if it's just for him. I think
I
it's choose
think
a player
I
though.
think it's choose a player. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, it is really good, and I've also noticed that you like to play allies with energy kickers, because don't yeah they have to have the energy. I like Thor a lot. I'm really happy that he's 3 cost. I was really concerned that he was going to follow in the Jane Foster footsteps and be 4 cost, and I think he would be a little bit outside of reach at 4. But at 3, he's very aggressively priced. He's very good. And I mean, like that's pretty much the name of the game of champions, right? Allies are flexible, and Thor having that toughness makes him even more flexible so he can attack minions. 3 damage at the villain is not a bad option, especially in solo either. So, like, I think that's one of those things that I fall into the trap of a lot in card games is reading an ability and trying to use that ability regardless of outcome, right? Like, I see that he has that ability, so I associate, hey, he has to use that ability. No, you can throw 9 damage at the villain, and that is very good, right? Swinging web kick is 3 for 8, Thor's 3 for 9.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it's good. So, I like Thor. I like Thor there. That's Thor for 4. 4 for Thor. I hope
I'm
you
not
did
gonna
that
say that.
intentionally. Yeah, I hope you did that intentionally. What's that
Let's say I
last
did.
pick? Yeah, yeah. And I'm also really happy because now I have at least 2 that were still on my list. So I can stop
Oh.
sweating a little bit, but I want to hear what your 5th pick is.
Now I'm thinking I need to try and pick something now somewhere to go for and shut him down. But I picked half your picks kind of accidentally in the villain, best villain video, and everyone sided with your backup picks, which was crazy. Uh, so I have like 5, 6 cards in front of me here, and I don't necessarily like any one of them more than the other, and I can argue for all of them.
It's in betweener,
So
isn't it?
actually, no. I kind of feel like I should go for an event, but the truth of the matter is, home technique is the reason events aren't on this list because you they're not that good baseline in general. They're fine. Some of them are quite good, but home technique is helps them out where they need it.
Mm.
So I'm talking myself out of going for an event here. I'm so many good choices here. I'm gonna go for pain, suffering. What do I go for? They're also even. I'm going to go for an event, talked myself out of it. This card isn't the most powerful, isn't the most efficient, but I'm going to say maybe it's the most flexible, and I'm going to go for Clobber. It's a
Ooh, okay.
yeah, it's a nice cheap attack event. It's 2 cost, but if you play it first, it's 1 cost basically because it kind of comes back to your hand. So you can spend that resource you spent on it, effectively again.
Mhm.
So it's 3 damage, kind of for a 1 cost card there, which isn't as good as hero cards typically are, and it's sure no turn the tide. But that's one of I would argue one of the best attack cards in the game.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, for aggression standards, that's just fine. Because it's low cost and damage, it's very flexible. You can put it where you need. But hey, you got a bad hand of cards. You can clobber once, comes back to you. You can clobber again, or you can spend it on something else that needs physical resources, like drop kick or anything like that, or Yarnborn. You've got these kind of cool options with it. And even if you need to do something else first, worst case you play it and it's 2 costs for 3 damage. Not ideal, but it is in the realm of being playable if that's what you need. So I think this is just the most flexible kind of card that I could put here because there are other cards, some that may be, form archetypes, some that may be a bit more efficient for what they do. But if I've got a couple of slots left and I'm building an aggression deck, Clubber might just fill those because it kind of works with everything. It's good in rush, it's good for just minion clearing, it's good for hitting the villain. So I really like Clubber, and kind of its versatility is its biggest strength I'm going with here. That is why it's my final pick.
Yeah, Clobber to me is like Hall of Heroes for you, where I used to use it a lot, and it's just not one of those cards that I grab out of the box that frequently anymore. I do like that it's not impede, where it's not limited to the villain damage, being aggression, being able to hit minions. Impede can only hit that main scheme, not side schemes, and I associate side schemes and minions as kind of the parallels between those two aspects. And so
Yeah.
that is nice. I like it being able to pop back to your hand. It's efficient if you need damage. But I think outside of Rush, I'm not running it that frequently. But I do like the card. It's nice that it's a physical. We have a lot. You mentioned Dropkick. That was actually on my list. I was a little nervous you were going to take that. That's actually not going to be my 5th pick. But yeah, I like Clobber. And yeah, nice.
Yeah, Dropkick was on my list, and I thought about it, but like he's just needs to stun and the steady stalwart argument back
Yep.
at me, and oh, it needs all these physicals. I'm like, okay, I didn't want too much resource lock stuff on my list because I've got Sunfire and Four now. They're not already locked to it, but yeah, so on and so forth. So I do still use Clobber sometimes. I like it for Bishop if you have too many resources. I like it for
Yeah.
Magic. That physical can be really useful to get it
Yeah.
back and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think some new characters maybe brought some new life back to it. So that will be my argument. Was even Jubilee about to come out with her sunglasses because it costs 2, but it effectively costs 1. You get a little bit more extra damage from the sunglasses triggering, and then it's back in your hand. It's got some stuff with it. So I'm arguing very hard in favor of it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
scared of your last pick.
So my last pick, my fifth pick in this draft, I did have Dropkick on my list. That was one of the two. Clobber was not on my list, so you left the two dangling. Dropkick, I do really like Dropkick. I think Dropkick's very, very good. I don't think that Dropkick gets as much recognition as I think it deserves because it's one of those older cards that's kind of been
Yeah.
overshadowed by the new flashy toys. My fifth pick is um I think my fifth pick is the only card that is on this list that has been talked about as being broken, overpowered. They should errata it, and that is Bring It. So Bring It is that final card. It's a zero cost card that draws you cards equal to the amount of minions that you have engaged with you. Now, the reason that this has been brought up in discussions as being broken or needs an errata is that there is no limit because there's a lot of cards out there. It's like max 3. Bring It is not. I've brung it bring did it for I think my max was like 9. Now that was a cheese deck, right? Like that was a
Yeah.
Vision with Ultron, but there is no limit. You can literally draw your entire deck with this card. And if you are playing a Bring It deck, there's a lot of times where you're building around that card in order to maximize its payoff. All you need is one minion for it to be worth running because it cycles itself. And we know that spiritual meditation is good and you're just seeing more cards. So that's the worst case. Well, I guess worst case scenario is you're using it for your kicker for Hone Technique, or not Hone Technique, but Sunfire and or Thor. But if you have two minions, you're plus one card. And like we were saying, cards in this game is very good. And so Bring It, being the aggression build, you're probably dealing with minions. I think this works in solo. It works very well in multiplayer, especially if you have cards that can grab minions, which are not on my list, but there are cards in the aggression aspect that I'm typically running with a Bring It build where I can grab minions from other players, be that Get Over Here or oh shoot, the new X-Men ally or the X-Force ally that I forgot. Um Richter? I think it's Richter. Maybe not. I don't know. It
You can
doesn't
hit
matter.
multiple, yeah.
Uh, but being able to have multiple minions on the table, using this card to draw as many cards as you have minions in front of you can be a huge swing. And now it is very situational. And that's why it is fifth on my list. But I think in the right circumstances, it is one of the closest things we have to a broken card in the aggression aspect.
Yeah, Bring is really interesting. It is on my list, but here's the problem I have with it. Here's my counterpoint.
Yeah.
It is situational. I think it favors a few heroes quite strongly and a few scenarios quite strongly. But then there are heroes and other scenarios where it's probably not going to be any good. So here's the thing: spiritual meditation is good because you can use it whenever. Also,
Hmm.
even when alter ego for some reason. That's so it's very very good. It just has no limitations.
They
Ah,
meditate when they're in alter ego too. That's fine.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes kind of sense, but they get to see 2 cards as well, and, you
Yeah.
get a bit more choice. With Bring It, if you don't have a minion in front of you, it's kind of a dead thing. It's just a blank card with a resource,
Hmm.
basically. That is a big downside. You did kind of touch on that, and that is what kind of put me off it because there's a lot of situations, a lot of hands where it's just doing nothing for me. Whereas, let's say Clobber here is very, very consistent. Bring is kind of the opposite, but whereas Clobber's not ultra, breaking any efficiencies, Bring It can be game breaking, absolutely. We talked about Bring It and both liking it in the podcast. We talk a lot more about it there, so definitely check that out if you're interested. But it can do some crazy things. I do really like, if I'm playing Thor or Valkyrie, things like that. It's probably going to make an appearance if I can afford the deck space because it's so much card draw. Cards are good. Card game, cards like, yep, all goes well. So I'm kind of just saying what you're saying at this point. So I think I like Bring It. I think it's a really good fifth pick.
Cool. Yeah. I think that's where it deserves to be on the list. Like I don't think it's a number one card because of the inflexibility that it has. Because I mean like we are limited to the amount of cards we can put in the deck and so we want those to be as flexible and as powerful as we possibly can. And so like you're saying, it very much benefits some heroes in some scenarios. So I think, it's worth being on the list but not in that number 1 or 2 spot, but I do believe that it should be on the list. And so yeah, cool. Are you happy with your list?
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think I'm really happy with the list in general here. I think we've got
Yeah.
some really cool stuff here to show off. So, but to be competitive, yeah, I'm really happy with my list. Your list, no, I can't say it sucks. It's a great list. I like most of it. I like pretty much every pick. So, Yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, I think, this is a great top 10 list. And so that is the list. Let us know who you think drafted the better 5 aggression cards down in the comments. Make sure that you go listen to the podcast episode all about the aggression cards. Again, that is linked down below in the video description or anywhere that you find podcast. I assume you can find it pretty much anywhere. So
It's in some places.
it's in some places. Excellent. That is Shadow of the Cast. Villain, it's always a pleasure having you on. It's a good time drafting with you. I'm happy with the list. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Hope everyone has a great day.
Excellent. Awesome. See you around. Peace.
Bye.